Hello and welcome to the Debating Toastcast, a podcast about all things debating, from the Debate Toastmasters Club, 104 London Debaters. Hello, I'm William and I am the host of this Debating Toastcast, and today I am very glad to be able to welcome a very special guest, namely my debating friend and colleague, Mr. Bill Moss. Hello, Bill.
Hello, William.
Great to have you with us here at the Debating Toastcast. So Bill is here because he is a great rhetorician, and this episode is going to be about rhetoric, why we use it. We're going to look at some techniques, some rhetorical devices that you can use in your speeches, whether it's a debate speech or whether it's another speech or work presentation, whatever it might be. These are going to be practical tools that you can actually use. And then at the end, we'll give an example of one of our favorite speeches where one of these techniques were used, just to show you how it can be done. Now, Bill, originally from Australia, but also British, but he can say more about that in a moment. But he once upon a time apparently wanted to become an actor, but that was too much hard work, he said. So it was better to become a salesman. So, but I'm sure that the world of the thespian art has a big hole, a Bill-shaped hole. But it's not too late, Bill. You can still become an actor.
It's possible. It could happen, yes.
Yeah. Stranger things have happened. And he's been a Toastmaster, or toast person, as he prefers, for 25 years. Very experienced in that field. Been a president, been vice president. He's currently the president of 104 Online Debaters, which is an offspring of 104 London Debaters, which is, of course, why we're talking about it here in this podcast. So I think I'm going to start with a question that we usually ask all guests that come on this podcast, Bill, and that's particularly apt in your case, and that is, Bill, where are you from? And I mean, where are you really from?
It's hard to say. I mean, I was born in London, and I've lived in London longer than I've lived anywhere else. But I did live a good 25 years in Australia, so I feel I am from London. Now I'm from Wales. Now I live in rural Wales, which is very nice indeed. It's very green, and I can walk up, and 50 yards away, there are sheep. And there are owls. I was woken up by an owl last night.
Good, but you keep busy doing poetry readings, I understand, and choir as well, yes?
Yeah, so I am trying to find the elixir of life, the secret to life itself, really. And as part of that, breathing helps, doesn't it? Breathing does help.
That helps, yeah. If you stop breathing, you won't last for long.
It helps. It helps. Like, one of the most important things is sleep. Anyway, like having now not having the onus of having a job, I can do things like, I mean, for instance, according to this watch, I do have two obviously, but according to this one, I actually got my sleep score last night was 87, which was better than 98% of people, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
So
you're good at sleeping. Well, it's nice to be good at something. I thought perhaps we could start, for the sake of those who are listening to this and may not be knowledgeable about the theory of rhetoric. What is rhetoric? What are we actually talking about? Because we hear that word used all the time, almost like a negative thing, like, oh, that's just rhetoric, or I'm an honest politician, I will not use rhetoric, which is, of course,
it's a rhetorical device in itself.
Exactly. So I thought I'm going to start by reading a formal definition. So this is in a book called Persuading People by Robert and Susan Cockcroft, An Introduction to Rhetoric. And then I'll say a little bit about what I personally think rhetoric is, and then perhaps Bill, you can share your view. But in this book, they say the following: rhetoric could be very broadly defined as the arts of discourse, or more precisely, the art of persuasive discourse, in that this most widely used and overworked term refers both to spoken and written language. And I think for me, in terms of public speaking in particular, I think rhetoric are all those things that you do in order to get your message across persuasively. So you want to change someone's mind, or you want them to do something, whether that action is to vote for you or to go out and live life differently, or buy a particular brand of soap or chocolate. It's you want them to do something, and so it's persuading people to get them to do what you want, one way or another, and you do that by all the things. The obviously the non-verbal communication as well, I think, is part of rhetoric, but obviously we're focusing on the verbal messaging here today. So everything you do verbally in particular, and then supported by your gestures, that whole package, everything is rhetoric from the moment you stand up and say good evening, ladies and gentlemen, until you sit down, and perhaps even before and after, for that matter. But yeah, so that would be my personal take on it. What would be your thoughts on that, Bill?
I can't really go beyond that. It is the means of persuading people by the use of your speaking, of your voice, your words, the means of persuading people to do something that you want them to do. So I was a salesperson for many years, and as part of that job, the job was to persuade people to buy the service of rubbish and recycling collections. And yeah, so that's, you would get a result by actually getting the sale, and that's what I did for 25 years, persuading people by the use of your words and voice.
So Aristotle, the old Greek philosopher, 2,500 years ago, identified three modes of persuasion, and those in Greek are logos, ethos, and pathos. And logos being the words that you speak, the actual content in terms of the substance of your message, and ethos being your credibility, that people find you credible, they believe in you, they believe in your message. And then finally, pathos, which is more the emotional engagement, that people can engage on a more emotional and personal level. So that's where you come in with your examples, anecdotes, things like that to make the message come alive. I don't know if you have any thoughts on those modes of persuasion. What can we do in order to make people trust us more as we're delivering our words, would you say?
And this is, so you mentioned that I did study acting, and I studied under, it's called the Stanislavski method, if you've probably heard of it. Basically, it's various means of changing your emotions to to deliver a line, to deliver a speech, but actually changing your emotions so that you feel either the same emotion or a very similar emotion, so it appears that you're having that emotion while you're saying the speech. So this it's, say like ethos, and so it is ethos. That is the way. It's not based on the words. The words are going to help, but it's not. It is the way that you are addressing how the emotions behind what you are saying.
Right, and some of the devices we can use in order to do that, to better get that message across to people, are what is sometimes called the flowers of rhetoric, the various rhetorical devices. And Bill and I have both had great fun studying this particular book. I don't know if you can see, there's a bit of mirror. There you go. He's got a nicer copy, much nicer. You have a nicer copy.
Paperback.
The Elements of Eloquence by Mark Forsyth. And so we've sort of selected a few examples from this book to share with you, dear listener. Bill, do you want to kick off and do one, and then I can do one after you?
What I found kind of miraculous actually today was that I was trying to find the specific term for a rhetorical device, which is making lists of things. When you make a list of things, I opened the book at random and I came across chapter 37, which is congeries, which is actually a single term. It has an S at the end, but it's not a plural. And this is I'd use the word list. So this is about, for instance, one of them is when you list things. And this is from St. Paul, from the Bible. Now, the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, violence, emulations, wrath, strife. You get it. So it's lists of things. He does go on considerably more, revelings, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy. It's making lists of things. It's a helpful device. You don't use it too much. Be a little bit sparing with it, but it's good. And I did use it recently in my most recent speech, which is about big pens, which I might get to later. But yeah, I find it can, within reason, if it's a good device to, because it's not normal, it's unnatural. People don't usually in normal conversation make long lists of things. It's just you wouldn't do it in a general conversation.
Because normally you'd have little verbs, adjectives, perhaps, and all these filler words that we normally have in a normal sentence. Whereas conjury is where you strip it of all that sort of grammatical building blocks, and you just pile on one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. Well, I wanted to share one called diacope. Diacope, which is the correct pronunciation. We looked it up. And of course, the most famous example of that is by a certain fictional British secret agent when he says, "My name is Bond, James Bond." So it's where you have one word sort of sandwiched in between two words that are the same. And of course, very well used also recently by a certain American president when Trump said drill baby drill for his oil exploration policy. That phrase has been repeated again and again. It's sort of an easy short form that really just hammers home his message very clearly. And then of course there's a more humoristic example of it as well in the Carry On film, Carry On Cleo, where Kenneth Williams' character says after having been attacked, "Infamy, infamy, they've all got it in for me." Just yes, a bit of a play on words, but that's diacope, and that can be a nice way to get people to remember the key message in your speech.
That last one was also an example of tricolon. Infamy. They all have it in for me. Yeah, it is a tricolon. It's a pun. It's a number of different things. It's a pun, but it's a tricolon, and it is a diacope too. Diacope too.
Diacope, yeah. Yeah, so the tricolon, I don't know if you want to say more about that, actually.
It's one of the tricolon is I think it's the first one I ever came across. It's I would say it's probably the most used rhetorical device. It's one of them
Mm.
for sure. So like what William just did, so he made a kind of a combination of a number of different ones with a carry on example from the carry on movies. Infamy, they've all got an infamy, which was actually three different rhetorical devices, being a diacope, a tricolon, and a pun. So often, if you can put two or more rhetorical devices together, they will have twice or perhaps three times as much impetus as if you didn't. So yeah, the three. It's all about once you start looking, once you know these things, and once you start looking, you will see them. For instance, when Tony Blair said, "You asked me what my priorities are, and there you have a question. You ask me what my policies are, and I will tell you education, education, education." So that the last bit is a tricolon. It's also repetition of this single word to drum it in.
Yeah.
So once you will see them everywhere. Every all good speeches use rhetoric. They have to. That is what good
Yeah, yeah,
speaking is rhetoric. So once you learn these things, you can go through any speech whatsoever and find out how
just
the
start
individual,
underlining. Yes, that's
which we
because
will be doing later.
absolutely. Yeah, I was just there was a couple of famous examples as well of the tricolon. Julius Caesar's famous words: "I came, I saw, I conquered," and of course the slogan of the French Revolution: "Liberté, égalité, fraternité." Mm. Well, so the next one, then I want to.
Wait a second. On that one too,
Okay.
it's also one of the basis for a very standard joke, which basically says a normal person comes and does something, and another normal person comes and does something, and then a totally abnormal person comes and does the opposite type of thing. It's a very standard joke, and you all know some of them.
Yeah, and of course the number three is always good. You come across that in fairy tales going back ever so long. There's always something, but
The Englishman, the Irishman, the Scotsman, never
yeah,
the
yeah,
Welshman. Poor old Wales.
yeah. Exactly.
This is why.
Yeah. Um. Okay, so number four then is one that I wanted to mention called the I'm going to be careful now with the pronunciation. Epistrophe, I think is
I've read about
epistrophe.
that today.
I think is pronunciation. So sorry, my pen keeps falling out. So and that is basically when you end each sentence with the same word. So that can be quite a powerful way to make people remember a key point from your speech. Is that you finish each sentence with the same word. Whatever you say, you will end that sentence with the same word. And even if you were to sing it, you would still finish with the same word. And now I'm using this technique to illustrate how you can finish each sentence with the same word. Famous examples, there's obviously the Hallelujah song by Leonard Cohen, which always comes back to that phrase, Hallelujah. And various other songs. It's very good for push, sort of really hammering home a particular. Of course, if you overuse it, you'll sound a bit manic. So you got to be careful with that. But there's a great examples in this book as well from The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, where he says, that's the following line: "Wherever there's a fight of sorry, I'll read that again. Wherever there's a fight so hungry people can eat, I'll be there. Wherever there's a cop beating up a guy, I'll be there. I'll be in the way guys yell when they're mad, and I'll be in the way kids laugh when they're hungry and they know supper's ready. And when our folk eat the stuff they raise and live in the house they build, why, I'll be there." So that lingers now in your mind. I'll be there, that phrase, because it's been repeated again and again. So that was number 4, epistrophe. That's it. All right. So, Bill, your turn.
I like synesthesia. It can be quite fun. Do I have an example of it? Synesthesia is when you describe, so when you describe, you use 2 different senses. For instance, she smelled the way the Taj Mahal looks by moonlight, which is from the book The Little Sister by the American crime writer Raymond Chandler. So it's a mental condition whereby colours are perceived as smells, smells as sounds. So you kind of mix up the senses, as does happen in the use of LSD, for instance. These things will combine.
I'll take your word for it.
Yes. So this it expands. Using this type of thing will make people think a little bit deeper and help you persuade them. It will involve them imagining and thinking deeper. I repeated that several times.
I know there's an example of that from my hometown in Ålesund in Norway. I come from a coastal town, and back in the 1950s and 60s in particular, the herring trade was big. We had lots of small and medium-sized fishing vessels going out in the season and capturing the fish, bringing it in. And when that was in full swing during the season, there were hundreds of boats, and the smell apparently was horrific. That fish smell everywhere. But people always used to say, "It smells like money." It smells like money, because they made a lot of money from that fish trade. So it smells like money.
Smells like money, yeah. Okay, that's good.
So I think that might be an example.
An interesting point there was that you said that. So you said that there was a thing in Norway. The point being that these examples, the rhetorical devices, are the same in every single language. The asking of questions, whether it's ancient Greek. So Jesus Christ said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life."
Yes.
And the light. No man cometh unto the Father but by me, which has the 3, the tricolon, and it also has another one, which is the antithesis. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. So an antithesis being that you what is it? When you use the opposites, it's a kind of a comparison of opposites.
And when you mention Jesus of Nazareth, another thing he said, of course, is an example of my next device here, when he said that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. Yes. Which I would suggest is hyperbole, slight exaggeration, although he went on to say that all things are possible unto God. But so hyperbole, I think, can also be a really great device to use. It's the best device ever. There's no better device than this device. And I'm an expert. I'm the world's best hyperbole user. There, you can't find a better hyperbole user than me. Yes. So here again, I think we hear echoes of a certain person, but without necessarily going into the details. But there was a great example here, actually, in the book, if I can find it again. So this is from a book by Dashiell Hammett. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. And he's describing private detectives. And he said he was a swarthy little Canadian who stood nearly 5 feet in his high-heeled shoes, weighed 100 pounds minus, talked like a Scotchman's telegram, and could have shadowed a drop of salt water from Golden Gate to Hong Kong without ever losing sight of it. So that was a great way. Yeah. So I mean, that's you never use hyperbole, do you, Bill?
Absolutely never. I've never used it in my life. I like that Scotsman's telegram.
I love that. That was brilliant. Yes, so basically exaggeration, just talking very, very big, but again, using it using it sparingly, ironically, is the best way to do it. Just if you have a fairly sober speech and then suddenly you pepper it with a magnificent, colorful exaggeration, people will perk up. It'll be like what was it? I can't remember what number it was now. Haydn's timpani symphony, where he has a beat of the great timpani drum, just to wake up the sleeping aristocrats as they were listening, and it can work in that way. You just beat the drum with some crazy use of hyperbole, and then people wake up and they pay attention to you. Right. So let's have one more from each of us, and then we'll go on to our examples from famous speeches. So have you got one more?
Alliteration being primarily, it starts off as a rhetorical device, but it is a means of getting people to remember what you've said. So, for instance, in a recent speech I did, which was about Bic pens, the title of the speech is Bic is best. So the alliteration of the B's there, and I later on say the beauty and brilliance of the Bic, using alliteration. It sticks in the mind. It's a poetic device, and it helps you. And you can use all other poetic devices, as in rhyme and rhythm and everything else.
Yeah, that's a great one, and there are some wonderful examples in the book. Again, get this book by John Forsyth. It's really worth reading for any public speaker to improve your public speaking game. Well, the last one from me is one that's really useful and also really quite easy to use. It's anaphora. So anaphora means that you. So remember, earlier on I had where you finish each sentence with the same word. But anaphora is when you start with the same word. So you say, for example, freedom is for everyone. Freedom is what we believe in, and freedom is what we are going to achieve. Then that word freedom is hammered again and again and becomes the key essence of your message. And that sort of leads me on to my example of famous speech. But I don't know, Bill, if you want to go on and tell us what your famous speech is.
My famous speech was the recent speech I gave about Bics. That is famous amongst some people, amongst me basically.
It certainly it became very famous within the club, because I should say here for the audience that Bill won the best debate speech. It was joined with another speaker, but definitely well deserved. And
because we lost the debate.
Although yes, your side lost the debate, so but you did persuade at least one person to join your side, so it wasn't completely wasted. So, but it certainly wasn't for want of rhetorical devices. So yes, please then share with us the example from your speech.
My name's Bill and I love Bics. So there's an alliteration of Bill and Bics. And there's also the hyperbole. It's a little bit extreme to say that you are in love with an inanimate plastic object. However practical. Look at this one. This is a gel.
Great. Beautiful.
Great. They're so good. I later on, so that's an example of hyperbole. I later on I say, it's only about two sentences down, I use conjuries. I say, and what's not to love? The medium grip, the soft feel, the glorious multicolored four in one, a veritable rainbow in your hand in pastel. So I use the lists there. I go through the whole thing, but yeah, there are numbers of rhetorical devices that I've used, similes, hyperboles, alliteration throughout. I'll go to William for his examples.
Well, thank you, Will. Yes, no, those were wonderful examples, and your speech was indeed very enjoyable. I remember it as such. Well, my example is going to be from history, and you simply can't get away in a podcast about rhetoric from Winston Churchill. He, of course, one of the greatest, I'd say, users of the English language rhetorically. And during the war, he had a very difficult task when he became prime minister, because essentially what was happening was that they were losing. You know, the French were losing, and the Americans hadn't joined the war yet, and so it was pretty likely that the Nazi war machine would reach Britain. And this is an extremely famous speech. But what I wanted to do was to give some background first, because I think a lot of people are not, either they're not aware of it, or even if they have been told, it's sort of just forgotten, which is that what Churchill is talking about in the passage I'm going to read is what defeat might look like. He's going to say that the Nazis may overwin us, or win over us, overrule us on the sea. They may overrun us in the air. They may land on our beaches. They may then go into our cities and drive us out of the cities, and then we'll end up in the hills and fighting from the hills like a guerrilla force. So it's not a very positive message, actually. However, the way in which he packages this logos, so that's the logos, that's the content, that's the actual content. The way he packages that with his rhetoric is to emphasize the feeling of bulldogish determination to resist and fight and not give up. And that's the message that comes through only because of the way in which he tells it. And it's actually a long speech about all sorts of things that are going on, which is not very exciting. So I'm going to read you the final passage, which is the famous one, but now you will have this in mind. And what he's talking about is that almost certain defeat. And this is how he tells you that we may very likely lose this fight. I have myself full confidence that if all do their duty, if nothing is neglected, and if the best arrangements are made, 3 things there, as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once again able to defend our island home, to ride out the storm of war, and to outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary for years, if necessary alone. At any rate, that is what we are going to try to do. This is the resolve of His Majesty's government, every man of them. This is the will of Parliament and the nation. The British Empire and the French Republic, linked together in their cause and in their need, will defend to the death their native soil, aiding each other like good comrades to the utmost of their strength. Even though, here we go, large tracts of Europe and many old and famous states have fallen and may fall into the grip of the Gestapo and all the odious apparatus of Nazi rule, we shall not flag or fail. That's the alliteration that Bill was talking about. Not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And I'll stop there because that's the That's the main bit. So you see here how he uses anaphora, the repetition of "we shall fight," which is the main message that comes through, that absolute determination to resist and not give up, even though the odds are so bad. And actually, we may lose this front, but we shall fight. We shall fight is the message that comes through, and which remains with us, and which is one of the reasons why this speech is so famous. So there we go. That was my example. And then, I don't know, Bill, if you have just a very practical tip, because I've got this book here, which I picked up in a secondhand bookshop. Always a good place to go and look for collections of speeches, Penguin book of historic speeches. And he's got a little commentaries before each speech. And it was a guy called Sorensen, who was the speech writer for President Kennedy. And Kennedy asked him, what is the secret of a powerful, speech, a rhetorically powerful speech? And Sorensen said, use short words. And if you notice with Churchill as well, he doesn't use many long falutin. Occasionally, he'll sort of just pepper in one here and there, just to sort of color his speech a little bit. But mostly they are very short, simple Anglo-Saxon words. And I think that's one of the key practical pieces of advice that I would give to the audience listening now. When you start drafting a speech, don't try and show how clever you are by putting in all the longest, most complicated words that you may think of or know about. Use clear, concise, and short words that will clearly put your message across, but make it exciting by the use of these rhetorical devices. So, Bill, what's your tip to the audience?
I mean, George Orwell also said it in the English language.
Politics and the English language, yes.
The English language, where he says, and that is one of the major pieces of advice, generally speaking. If you're not giving a kind of technical or scientific speech, make it simple. If you want to persuade people to do something, use Anglo-Saxon words of no more than 2 syllables. This is one of my books on great British speeches. So it's the Marks and Spencer book of the great British speeches, by the way. General advice, that is by far one of the best things. I would say, don't be afraid of rhetoric. Don't be afraid of using these devices. They do work. They can be overdone. You can make it too obvious. Be a little bit sparing, but you can use them, and you should. So things like the basic ones, the 3 basic ones are asking questions, the rule of 3, and antithesis, having examples. Those are the 3. Read the book, find out about all the other ones. There are plenty of others that you can use and do persuade. Synesthesia, we've said numbers of them. But if you use those 3, your speeches will be more interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's a good place to end. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Elements of Eloquence is the suggested reading for all public speakers out there, whether you're a debater or just an ordinary Toastmaster, so to speak, wanting to give an extraordinary Toastmaster speech next time it's your turn to be at the front of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to listen to Bill's examples here. He's a very experienced speaker, and I'm sure we shall tempt him to come back and talk more about using humor and how to use fallacies in a clever way. I think that's going to be one of our future topics, Bill. Don't you think that would be a good one? Yeah. Well, that's all for this episode. Thank you for listening, and see you next time. Thank you very much, Bill.
Okay, thanks.
You've been listening to the Debating Toastcast. Feel free to leave a comment, critical or encouraging, We welcome both. And if you'd like more information about joining the club or coming first as a guest, please have a look at our website, 104londondebaters.club, or send us an email on info@104londondebaters.club. That's info@104londondebaters.club. Thank you for listening.